next week, the state's House Emergency Beetle Subcommittee of the House Committee on Agriculture is scheduled to host its first meeting at the state capitol. As Colin Vidros reports, this emergency subcommittee will help to address one of the Pelican State's biggest industries.
Now we've seen an infestation of beetles.
The Louisiana House Emergency Beetle Subcommittee, a panel under the House Committee on Agriculture, will convene on July 9th to study and address the devastation of the state's forest industry due to the infestation of beetles.
You know, that may sound funny or not significant until you realize that it's attacking thousands and thousands of acres of commercial pine and timber, and it's also attacking just in our neighborhoods, in the residential areas.
In November 2023, the LSU Ag Center reported 50,000 acres of forests in the state were burned due to wildfires last summer, causing $71.4 million in damages. On April 10th, the State Department of Health reported a 60-year-old woman from Pineville died after a tree and power line fell on her home. As Johnson tells the Louisiana Illuminator, the tree was infested with beetles.
We have lots of jobs that are dependent upon it. Large portion of taxes come from it. And of course, it's one of our largest industries in the state.
During this year's regular legislative session, State House Speaker Pro Tem and Cenla State Representative Mike Johnson authored House Resolution 119, which passed the legislature and ensured the creation of the emergency subcommittee. Johnson is the chairman of the subcommittee. 12 state entities are represented, including the office of the governor.
We're trying to address the problem as quickly as we can and as forcefully as we can with every branch of government and every area of government and civic groups that can sit down, share information. How can we prevent it? How can we stop the spread? And what can we do to try to eliminate and remove those trees that pose a danger?
According to Johnson, the effects of the state's forest damages affect not only road safety and public safety, but also things like utilities. Our partners with the Louisiana Illuminator report that tiny bark beetles, named the Ips, Engraver, and Southern Pine varieties, have killed millions of trees across Louisiana and Mississippi because of last year's severe droughts. Currently, this leaves our forests to be susceptible to beetles.
And it's something we won't be able to solve immediately, but by putting everybody in the same room and talking about solutions and talking about ways that we might do something that hadn't had to be done before, maybe we can address it.
The first meeting of the Emergency Beetle Subcommittee is scheduled for July 9th at 9:30. For News Channel 5, I'm Colin Vidros.
And today, State Rep Johnson released this statement on the subcommittee's formation. He writes in part, quote, "The danger posed by falling trees presents an immediate and growing hazard for property owners and anyone who travels on a roadway. It threatens our utility infrastructure tremendously, particularly during hurricane season," end quote. That statement goes on to read, quote, "The committee will bring together leaders in agriculture, utilities, and insurance, as well as local and state government to address the significance of the threat and suggest solutions to assist citizens and interested and affected stakeholders," end quote.